Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is a fun mastermind for me. This is week 23. And if you know anything about me, you know I'm probably one of the biggest Michael Jordan nuts that there is. So 23. And I have my good friend Chris Parker here as my guest today. This one will be easy for me to remember in the archive of volumes and such. But Chris has I believe that Chris is relevant today for our mastermind series because he's worn a lot of different hats. He's sold, he's not sold, he's built a brokerage. Now he's focusing on selling again. He's also worn a loan officer hat for a while, and he's worked at a big bank and a brokerage. And so Chris has just a plethora of knowledge for us from the industry. He's also been through some of the bad times, the 2007, 2008 times, and then the many ones that happened in, say 12, 13, and then been in the boom. So Chris, good morning. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate you being here, and welcome.
Thanks for having me. Yes, I've had a lot of successes and had a lot of failures, but I'm still here, kicking and ticking is, the best I can. So
yeah. So Chris, you grew up in Edgewood, correct?
Yeah, in the Trenton area, yes.
In the Trenton area, and did you live there your whole? I know you live in Liberty Township now, but have you lived predominantly in this area your whole life?
Well, I was born in the hills or mountains of West Virginia, and luckily my parents decided to move to Ohio, which at the time was the promised land for employment. And I still say it is to some degree, but so they moved here, and so pretty much, since I think 1 or 2 years old, so primarily, yeah, in this area.
Great. And one of the questions I ask all of the guests is, when did you get into real estate, and what made you get into real estate?
So I got into the industry in mortgage January 10th of 2000. So that's actually when I got into the industry, as far as mortgage is concerned. But I did not get into real estate until after the financial disaster of 08. And I was looking for, well, what's the next thing, for me to do? So it wasn't until 2010 that I got my real estate license.
Okay. And what was the predominant reason for that? Why make that sudden shift?
So after I started off in mortgage in the background in the broker world. Then I went to a small savings and loan. Well, in this area, it's actually kind of a big savings and loan. But then I went to Fifth Third, and I seen some writing on the wall. Decided to open my own brokerage, and then 2008 happened. And as you know, Rob, because you've been through it, it was kind of like sailing a ship or driving a car, whatever, navigating in a very thick fog. Like, you don't know which direction to go, where's this going. I was kind of a one-man rodeo, and so I looked around and I thought, well, am I going back to school? Am I staying in this? What's best for me? And I looked around and I thought, well, real estate might be it. And so decided to get my license, and and it has been a very good vehicle for me.
Great. And when you got into real estate, how did you select the brokerage that you were working with? I think that's a question a lot of people that are venturing into it go through. So what was kind of the deciding factors on your brokerage?
So for me, it was my personality on the disc profile is, a high D, high I. So I don't really, I have a strong personality, and they could say I don't like to be told what to do. And so I really wanted to be, I wanted, when I got into real estate, I wanted to be left alone, and I wanted to, of course, get the majority, of my commission. And so that was the reason why I selected the first brokerage that I placed my license with. And it's only been, two, that brokerage and Compass. But that's really why I selected them was, I want to be left alone, let me do my thing, and pay me the amount that I, felt was fair.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I think a lot of agents go through There is a distinct line of, I want to be left alone, let me do my thing. And then the other side of the line is, please teach me, mold me, guide me into this process. Did you ever go through that where I need to learn the business, or did you kind of walk in with the mentality that I already know what I'm doing, you know?
So with that bull mentality, I would say I walked into it with the I already know what I'm doing. However, I did not, and that's really where I was hoping to take the conversation. Thank you for taking it there. I did not know what I was doing, and I fumbled, around, through, experiences, some good, and you hit it right, and some bad. And that's where I think that uh, over time I have learned that in this industry, it doesn't shut off, and it's really hard to do everything by yourself. In that, if you have support, then that can help uplift you, delegate, then that's definitely a good thing. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, and I think where, and again, I'm trying to lead you through this questioning. Not that I have any hope that you take it in a certain direction. It's just questions that I have.
Yeah.
Where do you feel like agents, in your experience, where do you feel like they have the biggest set of questions? Like, where did you, when you felt like you knew what you were doing, realize that you didn't, and you had the biggest set of questions that you felt like you needed help with?
Well, for me, I had, I didn't need help really. Well, honestly, I didn't need help. There was things I needed more help with, and things I needed less help with, I guess. I had been in sales since, 98. So, I already knew how to sell, knew how to apply the effort, and stuff like that. But, the experience, of the industry that others could, help with, and, in understanding that this business is very can be very hard, very tiresome. You need to take some breaks, not to burn yourself out. Business coaching, every one of the biggest things that I would say is that I realize is everybody has a coach. You look at Tom Brady, you look at Michael Jordan, you look at Joe Burrow. Everybody who is, has a coach. Joe Burrow, great quarterback, he's got a coach, strength coach, quarterback coach, and who was I to think that I did not need one? And so that, in my opinion, was ignorance, I must say. And so that is some of the maturing, in the industry that, I experienced is, yes, I can do a lot on my own, but I have to fumble through, the trials and errors of it. And anything that you want to be really good at, you need to be consistent, and you need to have a coach who's helping guide you.
Yeah, I love that. And you guys know that I participate in coaching as well. Chris, when the industry shifts, like we've gone through, so I mean, we've been through some massive shifts in the real estate industry, and also to mortgage. But how important is it to have that network of people around you to compare notes with, and also, oh my gosh, you're dealing with this too, like, okay, how did you handle it, etc.
I think it's very important, because you can, a lot of times, I mean, when you see something, from your perspective, you wonder, is everybody else seeing the same thing? Or is it something that maybe is in my business that I'm doing, that I'm not doing, that's getting that result? And so through, we have a huddle every Tuesday, virtual huddle, kind of like this. And that, at least helps me, and hopefully our agents, to really keep a finger on the pulse of what is happening. And and what are some of our successes, what are some of our failures, and it's much better to grow with others than to be on your own island. And when you're on your own island, it's just not, it's not as fun. You're like Tom Hanks and Wilson, you're talking to a ball. So we like the communication.
Okay. And this is hot off the brain here. I have a client down in Lakeland, Florida, not far from Orlando. They're closing on a house tomorrow. And we were just debriefing last night, and she said she's from this area, and she said, I feel like the real estate market in Florida is completely different than the real estate market in Ohio. She said, down here, every real estate agent is like worried about their place and their status with each other. They don't want to be offensive at all in the negotiation process. And I don't say that Ohio does that, but I feel like what I see is that the real estate agents in our area, maybe it's the Midwest, they're really focused on the client, right? I'm going to do what's best for my client, even if that means that I got boxing gloves across the table with the listing agent or the buyer's agent, whatever. Do you see that? Do you guys hear that when you go to conventions, that there's pockets of how real estate happens in other parts of the United States?
Are you?
Like let me give you an example. When this client was putting in an offer,
Yeah.
that it was not, in my opinion, and I listen, I don't ever try to be a real estate agent. I don't have those skills.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, it was not that low, right?
Yeah.
And the agent was like, oh, I can't submit this offer,
Mm.
and so it just, and she said to me last night that she felt like in multiple times in this transaction that while his status as a buyer's agent may have gotten them into this deal, there were certain things that he wasn't willing to negotiate for them because he was worried about how that would look in his
Wow.
reputation in the area. And I've heard that. My sister is a licensed agent in Florida, and I've
Mhm.
heard that from her as well, that it's like, I don't know why he won't submit this offer. And it's not just him, it's other agents as well.
Yeah, I mean, in Florida, I would say, here a lot of owner occupied, Florida, a lot of, rentals, investments, and such. And I don't know the ratio, if Florida is more saturated with agents than, this part of Ohio, and maybe, that makes things a little more like geopolitical or whatever. But, there, I would say, in my opinion, there is a balance, between, it's trying to balance, your agent relationships, with, serving your client. If your client wants to submit, something that you disagree with, I mean, I've had that happen to where I didn't think that, something would get approved. This was back in the lender owned days, and, that it was too low, that the lender would never approve it, and they approve it, and then I thought submitted stuff that I thought would, be accepted, and it wasn't accepted. I
Yeah.
mean, when I was in mortgage, it was the same way. This person's going, so I try not to prejudge. I try to guide my clients through, the reality, in my opinion, of the real estate transaction. And I would say that I would do the same with that listing agent. So if my client has a position that they feel strongly about, whether it's, the sale price, and, I'm not going to say I'm not going to present it. I'm going to talk them through it, make sure that it has, validation and accreditation. And then I will have, a talk with the listing agent. That way I can try to bridge the gap with both of them, if you will, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I don't think that I would ever say I'm not going to do this because they have hired me to represent them. And I just don't feel like that's, something that we should do. I could say, I will submit it, or hey, let me call the listing agent. Will you take this? We'll just go ahead and do this verbally versus,
Mhm.
it in writing. Hey, will you take this $50,000 under asking price offer? You have 5 other offers. No, you won't. Okay, great. Thanks for
Yep.
saving time.
Yep.
I would do
Yeah.
something more like that.
Yeah, and we've talked about that on a couple of the most recent previous episodes, that one of the biggest um issues, problems that has occurred over the last 12 to 18 months is that in general we don't do a great job setting expectations with clients. For example, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, Nikki Hayden was on here and she talked about her bucket of 3 to 5% down clients, and I've had this conversation with other agents as well. We don't set the proper expectations that they can't really compete in every circle, right? You're going in here, you're limited on funds. You can't do appraisal gap. You can't do,
Yeah.
waiving inspections because you may not have the money to do the repairs if necessary. And so, I think that in general, and this is on both sides of the transaction, both the real estate and the finance side, we have to do a great job of setting expectations.
That's a very good point. And, there are markets, there are bull markets in real estate that we just came out of where, the expectation is already set, for the buyer. Like, hey, there's 10 offers, it's offers are due by 5 o'clock. If you don't submit asking or above, then you're out. Well, that's very clear and concise and quick. But it is, and I'm not saying it's not like that anymore, because you still have some of that, because of the inventory issue that remains. However, I would say sellers and buyers require a lot more guidance, a lot more hand holding. We got to go deeper than the first, level of the onion with them. And Rob, I would probably say no matter if you're in Ohio or if you're in Florida, real estate agents aren't used to that. And so they feel like that, that's actually, they have to sell more, they have to persuade, they have to guide more. And I would probably say a lot of agents are getting frustrated because of that. It's harder, right? It's harder to persuade someone to maybe buy a house at a 6-7% interest rate. It's harder to persuade someone who, bought a house 2 years ago and has to, bring potentially cash to close because the equity is just not there now.
Mhm.
So that's, yeah, I would
Yeah,
agree with you.
I'm glad you said that, because one of the things that I think we've all experienced is in the market that we came through, and some people have denied this, but in the market that we've come through, sorry, proper English, my wife's an English teacher. In the market that we've come through, I have seen a shift in some of the agents in our area. I'm just going to work with listings. I don't have time to show 97 houses to one client, and lose 20 offers, etc. And now it seems like the shift has been back to, I'll do everything. I'll buy, I'll sell, I'll do everything, right?
Uh-huh.
And I think that people have, some of that has been necessary because of team reduction potentially. I mean, the mortgage industry has had people get out of the business. The real estate industry has people get out of the business. So it's May 2nd today. And a lot of time historically, we've thought there's the spring buying season, right? You're seeing people, parents that are like, okay, we've got to list the house and sell it so that we can move into a house before the next school year. I know we've got like 18 days of school left. I can't believe that we're thinking about the next school year already, but
Yeah.
are you seeing that happen now? And I guess the reason I'm asking is I'm looking at a statistic here that was just reported this morning that said new listings are down more than 20% year over year, which seems odd to me because it's May 2nd. So are we just in that little lull where maybe another week or two, you're going to see a lot more houses come available, or what's your feeling on that?
I do think that we are. It's amazing. I compare real estate, an analogy to fishing. The weather, plays a factor in it. What are the other conditions, that can play a factor, into your fishing expedition, and the wind, and honestly, I'd say real estate is the same way. On Sunday, it was hailing at my son's flag football game, and they're getting pelted in the face, and we're almost in May. So with the colder spring, I think that it has delayed some of the buyers and listings, with the interest rates being higher than they have been in recent time. I would say that they are just not as much motivated yet. However, I do feel like we are on the cusp of it breaking loose into that time. The second quarter of the year is historically the best quarter to for real estate sales, and then you have the third after that. So I just think we were just delayed a little bit on it. However, we were on our call earlier, and one of our agents, basically was like, half of my buyers are really not motivated, and the other half are motivated, and the other half that are motivated, are in multiple offers on listings, and, et cetera. So I think that the market is just trying to adjust and find its way, and it always finds its way. Just sometimes it's a little slower. And this year, I think, is the case.
Yeah, I'm glad you just said that, because that's another big kind of thought bubble that I think about quite often. It's no secret, and you guys are all professionals on this call, but we are in a time where the largest number of first-time home buyers is continuing to happen. We're setting records each year of largest number of first-time home buyers. A lot of that has to do with the generational gaps, et cetera. Chris, you and I are close in age, and we came through a time when there was the starter home, right? Like, we're going to buy a house. It's not our forever house. Like, Amy and I, we bought a house that was before kids, right? And the minute that we found out we were having a kid, it's like, all right, we need a bigger house. Do you feel like when we talk about expectations, that first-time home buyers have changed either their expectations or what they feel that they deserve and are privy to in terms of what that first house should be? Do you think we need to reset expectations of, hey, this is just your starter home and we'll move up, later?
I think that they are just trying to find, get in where they fit in, and to find a way. Their affordability, is not what it was a couple years ago. And so I think that, and on expectations, I'm seeing different, things. Some are, wanting to shoot for the moon, and some are, living with parents and almost a little, or family, and almost a little too comfortable. And so, I just think it depends on, overall, what are their, goals. But to me, it seems like they are just not ready to bite off more than they can chew. Where I would say when I was younger, I would have been more apt, to do that. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah, and I think again, I have the knowledge of you and I are friends, but you've got the mentality still of an investor, and I feel like even in that regard, we should educate clients on, look, you don't have to buy a lemon,
Yeah.
but if you can get just the big gains, and if you look at history and the people that have done really well financially, usually real estate is a part of their portfolio. And when you buy at the top and you think that that's all you need and all you can afford, there's usually maybe a smaller gain there than if you buy something that needs just a little bit of elbow grease, and you still use the appreciation, and then parlay that into the next piece and the next piece and the next piece, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that if you have any plan on building a real estate portfolio, I think every first-time home buyer should buy a 4-unit. I mean, that's, I knew that back in the day. I didn't do it, but I would, highly advise everybody to, start off with something. And I guess that can piggyback to what you were saying is, buy something small. You don't have to, sell it. You can rent it and have that to start your portfolio. But I would say multiple doors are, better, especially if you can, buy on your first one. Because you can buy up to a 4 unit owner occupied, rent out the other 3. Now, granted, it's going to be more, of a price tag. So you got to look at affordability, but, that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, no, that's right. What I was told as well, whether it was duplex or a 4 unit or whatever, live in one side, rent out the other, let somebody else pay your mortgage. So
Yeah.
that's good.
But leasing's 100% interest. So, I heard that the other day that if you're, leasing property, you're paying 100% interest. And Rob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I was wondering, when we were on our huddle, what has been the average and, 30-year interest rate, just what has been the average over a certain period of time? And I just Googled this and can't remember even what website it came from, but it was, basically saying in the last 40 or 50 years, one of those two of tracking, that 7.5, I think, was the average interest rate over that period of time. And I'm assuming that the interest rate is lower than that today. So on average, we're, below that. So
Yeah, so 100% agree with you. I've seen those numbers too. And I think in this market, when we're talking about expectations and affordability, for me, I like to tell stories, right? And I like to tell life stories. So, again, I've said this before, I apologize if you've heard it, but my wife and I, when we got married, we didn't want to rent because we thought it was a waste of money. We never wanted to rent. As soon as we were married and moved out of where we were living, separately, we bought a house, and we didn't have a lot to rub together at the time. Like, we barely scraped together the 5% down payment. They didn't have 3 back then. But we scraped together the 5% down payment. We bought a house for $140,000. Did it have everything we needed? No. Had like big floral wallpaper and stuff that we were that couple that watched Trading Spaces, and it's like, oh, let's paint stripes on the wall. Let's do this, let's do that. And so we did it. We put all that effort into it. And then when we found out we were expecting our first child, it was like, okay, let's sell this house and let's build. And now we're in a better spot financially. We turned that $140,000 investment into a $175,000 sale and took that chunk plus what we had originally put in. And that was our down payment in the house that we have today. So, like, I think that there's a lot to telling a story and setting the expectations, because we have so many people in that 3 to 5%, 3 to 5% bucket of down payment. And they are still thinking, oh, I want to buy a $500,000 house for my first home. It's like, well, you can't really compete with a lot of these offers when you do that,
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to, I would say you definitely want to start small, get your feet wet, but real estate is a great investment. I mean, you look at Donald Trump and what he's done with real estate. You look at Grant Cardone and a lot of and I can't remember the statistic, but at the end of the day, a lot of financially wealthy and independent people. It's real estate. I mean, that's
and
very good investment.
And those are 2 great examples. They're 2 modern examples, but if it's not new by any means. If anybody that's watching this wants to go, what Chris and I were told when we were 20 years old was go read Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it was the same principle then, buy a property, let somebody pay your mortgage, et cetera. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to open it up for questions, and as you guys are figuring out what to ask, Chris, what is your biggest piece of advice for fellow top producers in this market? What would you tell them?
I would say dig your heels in and find your way. I mean, this is going to be a pros market, and the ones who don't, dig their heels in and find a way to make it happen, they will fall to the wayside. And be consistent, put your head down, and just work hard, take care of your clients, and you'll come out of it. That's what I've done in the past, and has never failed me.
Good. All right, who's got a question for Chris?
Come on, Paige.
I got my wheels spinning. I'm trying to think.
Lindsay?
Yeah. You got anything, Linz?
Well, I think I might know you pretty well, so I don't know that.
I was gonna say she's heard everything.
I've heard it all. I've heard it all plus some. I think
you could probably recite
all of that a while ago.
I can probably tell you what you're going to say before you're saying it.
You probably can. But one of the things that I wanted to say about real estate investing, outside of it being a great thing, GC Grant Cardone had put it on Facebook, and it basically said financial independence is created when you are getting paid to not work. If that, so for, and in real estate sales, I love real estate. I've went through the burnout, et cetera. I've, found my love for it again. And it's great income. But I would say also with those top producers to add on, what I said before, start investing in real estate. Because our industry, it can take a lot, out of you, and so whether it's, I did a lot on my own, and then we've been, growing a team and delegating some of those, duties. But so outside of, growing a team that's bigger than yourself, I would also highly recommend investing, in real estate. That would be it.
And Chris, you've kind of dipped your toe into some different investing waters. I mean, that you currently own a barbershop, and so you've done some commercial side and some residential side. How did you learn that? Was it School of Hard Knocks, or did you have a mentor that kind of taught you through that?
So I've really, we talked about coaches earlier, and some of the coaches I've been listening to heavily are Robert Kiyosaki. I've seen what, Donald, Trump has done, Grant Cardone, they, Dave Ramsey, some of those, but, I also looked around, and in real estate sales, you have to perform, right? And if you don't perform, or the market, isn't there like it used to be to perform, then, you do have income fluctuations, and there's ways to balance that out to make sure that you're financially okay, et cetera. However, with real estate investing, the check, as they say, comes every month, and so that really, for me and what we're doing in our portfolio, that was something that was important, for us, is to, create a passive income flow, to alleviate some of the pressure of having to perform if and when the market is or isn't there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Again, we've joked about this, but in how well I know you, I know that one of your properties, you recently got approved for Section 8. And I didn't know this, and maybe you guys all did, but every school district, it is a state mandate that if possible, every school district has to have a portion of Section 8 in its district, right? So when, like, I live in Lakota, when they were districting that, they had to give equal Section 8 housing to each East and West district. How has that process been for you in terms of, as an investor? I know typically you may not want to go down the Section 8 path, but there is some benefit to potentially the subsidy that those people would receive. How's that process been for you?
It's been a learning process, is, but it's not been a bad one. Having the mortgage background and real estate background, it really, has not been bad. And we experimented with a property that we, had in Middletown, renovated it, and we were, renting to, self-pay. People were probably about 1,500 a month on self-pay. However, Section 8 was paying $1,709, a month. And so, going through the, financial, crisis in 2008, I seen, people who were, self-pay, they were struggling because they, had lost their jobs, et cetera, and were struggling, to pay. But the investors that I knew at that time, that check, kept coming every month. And so I would say, our portfolio, has both, has, Section 8 and self-pay. But in the Middletown area, for example, Section 8 was paying way more than a self-pay was. But at the end of the day, it is also qualifying and making sure you get the right, tenant in there. And that's a little harder on Section 8. But we did find a pretty good tenant. She plans on being there for a long time. And if all is, according, then, she will be.
Great. Miranda, I know you joined late. We've kind of gone through the get to know you part with Chris. And honestly, I've gotten to know Miranda over the last 6 months or so. I feel like for those of you that are on this call live, that you guys operate in fairly similar markets. Chris, Miranda works out of the Comey office in the Montgomery area. However, she lives in Bellbrook, and does most of her business in the Dayton market. And so while she's heard agents on here talk about, multiple offers, she's in a sometimes different market because Dayton is its own kind of animal in regards to Cincinnati. You guys kind of in the Trenton market, Springboro, et cetera, kind of falls in between. Maybe not as much of the Dayton market, but I feel like there's some similarities there. So Miranda, any questions that you would have for Chris?
Oh, here.
Put you on the spot.
My camera. No, you're all right. I'm fixing my camera here. Okay. So it sounds like I'm late to the show, obviously here. So I apologize, but it sounds like you're big time into the investment world. Is that kind of your bread and butter, Chris?
I've honestly, I do a little bit of all of it. We have a brokerage, we have a team, for real estate sales, and we have some real estate investments. Really, my advice was, we all have a real estate license. What's better than to invest in the product that, we sell, create some passive income flow, that way it will help subsidize, really some of our, sales income and be hopefully a little more consistent at times.
One question I did have since Robert brought it up is, since you are kind of a buffer, if you will, between the Dayton and the Cincy market, and we've talked for years, hey, that's eventually going to be one big, conglomerate area. Do you feel like you're more the Cincinnati? Do you feel like you're more the Dayton? I mean, what do you feel since you're the middleman?
I mean, Butler County, the entire county is, where we, focus. And of course we go outside of it within, an hour radius, but I would say I identify more with Cincinnati, probably because I'm normally down at the Bengals or the Reds or, something like that. I have grown up, going, south, but I know a lot of people who live in this area who grew up and they go north. So, for me, I would say I identified more with Cincinnati, but I love both areas and both have, different things to offer.
Chris, do you see, because Miranda just sparked this question in me, do you see like Middletown being a different market from Trenton or Madison, even like in neighboring communities? Do they operate differently sometimes?
I think it just depends on what people are, looking for. Are they looking for, do they want in the school district? Or do they not want in the school district? are they looking for something that is, affordable? I mean, affordability is a big thing right now. And I would say when that affordability is stretched thin, then people are willing to do and go places that maybe are more affordable. I hope that answers your, question. But I mean, and yes, I mean, there's differences, depending on, like I said, the school district, the property, is there any industry and jobs, around it? AK Steel or Cleveland Cliffs is, I think, what it, is now. A lot of people, live, close, by that as a result. Is that bringing them in, or do they work for P&G, and are they in the Lakota area?
Yeah, Miranda, I would think it's hard in your market because you've got like Beaver Creek and pockets of Xenia that are blowing up, and you've got Bellbrook, and then you've got places near Stanley Avenue and stuff like that. So I would think that it's kind of you have to be a jack of all trades in terms of knowing that area and negotiating.
I mean, it definitely has. I mean, we're kind of moving towards the Cincinnati model, in that I've said to you numerous times that you guys are definitely neighborhood by neighborhood, and it's super specific on knowing what's going on in there, and if it's hot or if it's not. And we've kind of moved that way also, because but ours, what I would say, is more based on price point. You got to know the price point in our area, because some are going and some are not. And so that's definitely a big difference that we've seen in our market here.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Chris, I really appreciate it. I kind of I didn't even really have to beg you to be on. I appreciate you jumping in. I have always enjoyed kind of talking about this stuff with you, whether it was in a golf cart or at a ball game or whatever. And so today we got to do it officially. So I appreciate it. I did want to say, and Miranda, I may have told you this in a conversation earlier, but I'm super excited about next week as well. Danny Barron was our guest on week 7, and Danny has built this really large team in the area. And Danny talked about, I always try to listen to a speaker and then figure out maybe a direction to go. Danny talked about when Mitch Kinney joined him. Mitch is his director of operations, and Mitch walked in and was like, I've got this vision for you and your office and your company. And when Danny heard it, he was like, you're hired, right? So Mitch is going to be my guest next week. They have a large team. Mitch helps run the operation. And so we're going to take a little different spin next week, where we talk more about operations, because I think whether it's a live audience or people that watch the show afterwards, people are wondering like how to get more operational help. And so, when I talked to Mitch last week, he had done 22 different agent check-in calls on that day. And so I'm anxious to hear, that may sound like a nightmare to some, but I'm anxious to hear how he goes through that and helps manage and keep the team running efficiently. So that's my plug for next week. Chris, I appreciate it. 23 weeks, obviously. Miranda and Lindsay, you guys have been big supporters of this. I appreciate you and anybody else that watches this after the fact. So Chris, thank you. And yeah.
You're welcome. Where do you post this for those who want to watch?
Yeah, so this gets posted on my YouTube channel. And then, obviously I'll send a copy to you once we're finished. And Miranda knows this because she just was the recipient of this. But I chop up some of the content, take my ugly mug out of it. It's just you, and you can use it for whatever you want for marketing, etc. So,
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me, and hopefully we'll be on a deal together here soon.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys. Appreciate you.
Thanks.